for joining us tonight and in the evening. I'm just going to start with kind of etiquette, if we could just keep our microphones muted whilst the main session is happening, but then we'll be going into breakout rooms later, and obviously feel free to share conversation and chat. We're going to record the session. I guess a lot of the conversations are going to be in breakout rooms, and we're also going to record the breakout groups, but those won't be going kind of loaded up onto the internet. They're more for our own purposes, so that if we want to capture as much of the conversation that's happening as possible and the ideas that can come up, see what we can take forwards, or as much as we can take forwards. So if everyone's happy with that, if you don't want to kind of have your face on screen, you're eating your tea, then please turn your camera off now and we'll start recording. I guess only other thing to say is really to welcome you to the conference itself. Like, this is a session that's kind of being held within the Northern Real Farming Conference online, and it's great that so many people are getting comfortable with the Kiko chat and finding that way of having a conference community online, which is great. So yeah, welcome very, very much to this session. Just a quick little bit of background about where the session came from. I work at the University in Lancaster, and I have a really privileged job in some ways as a knowledge exchange fellow, which means I'm not really doing my own research. I work to connect up researchers with all the people that might want to use research, so we can design stuff together, and we can try and design research that might have more impact, I guess, in some ways, and also help kind of other knowledges feed into the research process and get farmers doing research, get other people doing research and learning from each other. So I'm funded by NA Agri-Food, and as part of my role in March, pre-COVID, I had for some time been working with a local group that was part of the facilitation fund in North Lancashire and Morecambe Bay area, and we had put together a session where we wanted to kind of run through how do we all work together. Like, we all have perspectives about the uplands and about kind of the landscape around us, and how do we share knowledge and work together differently and more kind of collectively. So we had this session. It was set for it must have been the first week of lockdown, so obviously it didn't happen. We cancelled that. But we really, some of us like Kate and Nick and Lisa and others, we got discussing we'd still really like to have this session, and we wanted to host it within the Northern Real Farming Conference, and maybe with the potential of having more sessions with different groups of farmers as well in the coming weeks and months. So yeah, I just mentioned that obviously the session, I've been named on the session, but it was co-designed with Kate Gascoigne from the Farmer Network, who's up there in the corner, Lisa Norton from the Centre for Ecology and Hydrology, she's turned her camera on, and Nick Renison, who works for HDB as a knowledge exchange person, but she's primarily, I guess, a farmer up in Cumbria and in Penrith. And actually Nick's going to give us a perspective later, so we'll tell us a bit more about her journey to change it, like her upland perspective. And what we really want to do in this session is capture the different perspectives about how the uplands are managed, and like where the common ground lies between the farming and conservation communities, and also the farming, conservation and research communities. To understand as well, and yeah, to understand and maybe learn from what has inspired and enabled farmers to change practice, and also to identify what's needed in terms of training, whether it be networking or more research, in order to support kind of the northern farming community in managing the uplands for multiple benefits for people and nature, and incorporate more agroecological approaches. And we want to do this mainly through discussion with you guys in groups, although we'll have a little bit of a warm-up as well, with some perspectives given by, we've got Nick Renison, we've got Pete Leeson from the Woodland Trust, who's going to give us a conservation perspective, and also Stephen Ramsden and Claire Foster have joined us, a farmer from Nidderdale, and Claire, who works alongside him as I think conservation advisor, although she'll probably tell us more. So they're going to give us a quick short perspective to kind of get some ideas flowing about how different kind of communities of practice are working together. Yeah, so you're all filling in here your ideas, your kind of introductions, and it's great to see so many people. Becky is going to try for the breakout groups to get a real mixture of farmers, conservation advisors, researchers, so that you're not all in a group with just farmers or in a group with just researchers. So she's trying to take it from the chat, what people are writing, and sort people. So we'll try that as best we can, and we'll see what comes up. So thanks, Becky, for doing that. That's brilliant. So now I'm going to pass to Nick, who's going to give us a short perspective, I guess, around kind of what's inspired her farming practice in the past few years.
Hi everyone. If I talk too long, Rachel, just tell me to shut up. So I'm Nick Renison, and I farm in Renwick near Penrith with my husband Reno and 2 kids. We came here in 2012. Previous to that, Paul was a farm manager in Patterdale, the Lake District, and we came here with a very conventional mindset. We were just production orientated, and I wasn't too keen on butterflies and bees. Anyway, so we arrived and we had a quite complicated system for the first 2 years, 2 lambing flocks, and scimitar suckler cows. We relied on a lot of inputs, and I think we're heavily borrowed, and I think long term it was I could see it wasn't, well, we could both see it wasn't going to be sustainable, or we were going to be living on stone soup. So in late 2013, we went to see these 2 brothers in Northumberland, and it's quite a big farm, it's organic, it's very mixed, and they had a purely grass-based system for their cattle and sheep. And it just, I remember we came back and Reno said, we're doing this. And then we started buying electric fences. And since then, we have been in a rotation. So we group the animals together quite thickly, and they're on a move. They're moved at least every 3 days. So it's just, and from that, it's been a step process really of becoming more and more, we call it regenerative, but it's just the term we use. We're not organic, but enabled us to grow much more grass. We stopped using fertilizer about 5 years ago, and it's just been like a bit of a revelation really. And I can remember walking up our allotment. We've got like 130 acre allotment with Simon Stainer, our Natural England chap. And I was quite proud of this big block of land, and it had a few odd little things in it, a few flowers I didn't know what they were. And I remember being quite proud of it, and he wasn't overly thrilled with it. He was just said, it's all right. And now we're kind of farming in a different way, and things are coming back. I can really appreciate how he could have told me it was just rubbish, but he didn't, but he wasn't that impressed with it at the time, but it is getting better now. And so we're in some HLS schemes, and we started planting hedges. We get battered by the helm wind here. So, and it's quite a bleak farm. So we put in some hedges, and the difference that they have made has been amazing. We put in lots of little woods in corners of fields and stuff. And yeah, I think it's just been a real journey of realizing how you can be more profitable farming like this. You can tick a lot of boxes for wildlife, and it's just a nice environment to work in. But I suppose on the profit side, that has been a real, well, very noticeable really. And it's through this that we've met people like Pete, who's going to be talking in a minute. Pete, he always gives me abuse because I don't have the right coffee for him. He likes posh coffee, and I only have instant coffee. But he's just taught us a lot about planting trees, but a lot about biodiversity. But I think also we've taught him a lot about farming and about how I think between us we've come to the thing that you can have both. And so my key points that I was asked to say is visiting other farms is because if you just stay in your own little thing with people who are maybe not of such a different mindset to you, you're never going to get anywhere. So go to lots of different farms, that's key. Surround yourself with positive vibes, and understand that we as farmers don't always know everything, and we can learn. And I think in a nutshell, Rachel, that was it.
Brilliant. Thanks, Nick. That was great. That was less than 5 minutes.
Oh, I could have rambled on a bit more.
Great. You mentioned Pete. So Pete, do you want to give your perspective next? That'd be great. I think you're on mute.
I was, yes, sorry. In this context, I'm I suppose, the wildlife advisor in the sort of three people who set up for this conversation. So there's a little bit of background first, and then the three questions you asked me to look at. So I trained as a land agent and spent quite a few years buying and selling shops and offices in London and the South West. So I came to conservation a bit later on when I went back to university, having become really concerned about both species loss and climate change. And that's nearly 30 years ago. I've been at the Woodland Trust for 26 years now. And the last 10 years I've spent very much looking at landscape scale change and how we can work with everyone in the landscape to bring about nature conservation, climate resilience, but also rural jobs, health and well-being in people. So the first question I was asked was, what have I learned from farmers about upland landscapes? I think coming to Cumbria fresh from a lot further south, you come with perhaps a different mindset, but it's been fascinating to learn about the sort of farming side of things. I think the first thing they've shared is that it's a knowledge of hardship of living and working in an always wet and cold landscape. Farmers on the whole, they're living in tight communities. There's a massive pride, a very deep history, and very much a love of what they do on a daily basis. And those are all real positives. But I've also come up against some negatives, which probably are things like a resistance to change and maybe a skepticism about new ideas, some outsiders, and also things like climate change and those sorts of issues. So it's both the positive and negative have come out of that from the upland landscape. The next question was an example of rewarding inspirational collaboration with farmers and conservation groups. You know, I've got so many positive stories now. 10 years of collecting fantastic work with lots and lots of people, from T-Bay Common to individuals, whether it's extensive grazing or mob grazing or whatever. But as Nick has mentioned me, I'll mention Nick. The joy of working with Nick and Paul was that they accepted me in to have good conversations. We sat in the kitchen, we kicked around all the stuff around farming and conservation. And whilst we had some robust discussions, we were able to each see the other side's view. And I have to say, since 2013, I've known them now nearly 8 years actually, they've delivered in spades. They've thought about their soils, they've reduced their inputs, they've put hedgerows back, trees on the fell, changed their stocking regimes. And I have to say, I think their farm is a perfect exemplar of crossing the bridge between conservation and farming. So that for me has been inspirational, that people have been thinking about it, they're changing, and they're really investing heavily in the thought behind what they're doing. And the final question was, what would I pass on to other people? I think you need to be honest about who you are, let people know where you stand, but at the same time, constantly seek to understand their point of view and what lives they have. Learn about their daily lives, their stresses and strains, but look for common ground, however unlikely sometimes that seems. You need to give as much time as you can and don't expect immediate change. And accept that you might have to travel a long way to meet people. But finally, also take heart when somebody does accept you, because it's really worth the effort. Thank you.
Brilliant, thanks very much, Pete. That's very good. Kate, I know, could I just ask you to introduce Stephen and kind of the farmer network, just briefly?
Oops.
Sorry, I was throwing you in there a bit.
Sorry, yeah, I wasn't expecting that. Hi. Yeah, the farmer network works in Cumbria and the Yorkshire Dales, and we've been going 10 or 12 years now, and we do try to support farmers in what they're wanting to do to change and adapt to changing circumstances, reduce their costs, knowledge exchange, and hear about farming from other places. And also we quite often act as a sort of a channel for other bodies who find it difficult to maybe connect with farmers or reach farmers. We provide a link sometimes and can work as a network. We've got no political views, or we're not a lobbying organisation, but we just try to, do what it says, network farmers for their benefit and for the wider farming environment, really. So environment's, one of the key things on our radar. So yeah, Stephen's was one of the initial starter members in the Yorkshire Dales, and works really high up in Middlesmoor in Nidderdale, and he's been a sort of leading light in helping us all to think and react and progress, I think. So it's great that he can join us tonight and tell us about his sort of perspective. But also on the call is Claire Foster, who also works for the Farmer Network, and she is a environmental, she's a partner on a farm, and she works as an environmental advisor, and she works for the Farmer Network, getting farmers together for group meetings and projects. So we're all here tonight, and hopefully we'll be able to take some good things from what happens and help other farmers get on. One of the problems tonight was getting farmers in remote areas onto decent enough broadband, especially as we're right in the middle of the sheep sales, which is sort of payday for most hill farmers. So everybody's got to get their sheep dressed as well as they can and get them sold as high as they can. So sorry, Stephen, please carry on.
Thank you, Kate. Good evening to everyone, and a very good turnout at 67 participants. Yeah, I'm Stephen Ramsden. I'm a 4th generation landowner in Upper Nidderdale, and we are an estate of 9 farms, including myself. So I've got 8 tenants plus myself, and I'm a 1st generation farmer, and I've been farming for 35, 33 years, something like that. And of those 30 years, I've been actually in stewardship for around 30 years. So I've been in it a long time. It has to be said that, and it's not often mentioned, and I don't think they're given any credit for it, we were originally bought in 1919 by my relations as a shooting estate. And in our case, in Nidderdale, it's red grouse shooting. That very much works part and parcel with what we do on Middlesmoor, because I have to get a balance between the farming community, the shooting community, and the estate. And sort of trying to bring this all together in a partnership and in a balanced fashion. And actually environmental stewardship in that sense on Middlesmoor works so well, because the majority of our farmers are actually in stewardship. And that has been a big resource to be able to pull on in the last 30 years, to put the improvements in and carry on doing sustainable farming, which is what we do here. The majority of upland farmers, not everyone by any stretch, manage to do things sustainably. And I'm in a landscape, and I've known this area, and I'm 58, I've known this area for well over 50 years, where there actually hasn't been a great deal of change. Now, when I say change, there's been certainly change in the people, because we're now, majority of my tenants are all younger than me. I've now got a new generation of farmers to be able to pass it on, as I've got my son here to my left, one of my 3 sons. The other son is actually farming in his own right as a tenant of mine as well. So with that in mind, we come to definitely a crossroads in the uplands, and that's probably part of what this conference is for. And it could go one of 3 ways possibly. It could carry on as it is. It could go down the conservation route, come the balance with farming and conservation, or it could go down the 3rd route, which you can guarantee very few hill farmers want to see, down the rewilding route, which is sort of, would completely devastate the communities in the uplands, which are all partly been devastated by holiday and second homes, because some of the upper dales, holiday and second homes are probably in the region of 75%. So I've actually, all my houses are rented out to locals, probably for the not same money I could get for it, but by doing that, I'm maintaining the community. And going forward, it's very important from a knowledge point of view and from a community point of view that we try and take everyone with us, and that includes all of the participants with us tonight, but also other interested parties which want to join in, so to speak. And this is the opportunity to do it. But once again, there has to be a balance. And in my case, it's shooting, farming and community. And as far as I'm concerned, it's long may it continue. Now, when I say farming, I mean food production as well. Because in my case on stewardship, the amount I produce has probably dropped by a third to 2/5, because that's what environmental stewardship has dictated. And to be fair, and I'll be honest, it is a much better income stream than producing food, because the lion's share of the farmers, especially in the uplands, lose money on producing food. And as an island nation, we don't want to lose that side of it, because we've been short of food before, and no doubt history will repeat itself and we'll be short of food again. So thank you very much for your time. I think that's all. In case Claire Foster, who is one of my tenants, not sister-in-law because she's not married, but she's been a very good part of our community in getting everyone together, together with the Farmers Network, and bringing a bit of brains into the situation where a majority of us have got more common sense, I should say, than brains in a definitely a more complex world that we're living in today. There's Mark here to my left, my left, and he's the next generation of farming. And we don't want to lose the sight of that, because as one of the speakers has already said, it's the next generation we've got to be thinking out and passing our skills on to the next generation. Because at the end of the day, we're all custodians of this environment we live in. And it's got to be done sustainably. And it's a global issue, which somebody actually mentioned as far as food is concerned, but it's climate change. And that is by far the biggest elephant in the room from a global perspective. And we don't want to lose the sight of that global angle, which is what we're all about. And that is it. Thank you very much.
Lovely, thanks. Claire, did you have anything to add? Or?
Yeah, thanks Rachel, and thanks Stephen. It was quite short notice when I spoke to Stephen about this session, so I'd just like to say a big thanks to him for agreeing to be involved. So yeah, it's quite overwhelming really when I've read down all the chat, you know, to see who's actually on the call and who's on the conference and who's involved, and it's quite overwhelming really to see just how many different people there are that are interested in this subject. And I suppose that's a reflection of the sort of size of the topic that we're talking about. It's such a huge topic and so prevalent at the minute with the future of farming, where we're heading. I'm really on this sort of call and conference coming at it from a farmer's perspective, and have my farmer hat on, if you like. And I do think it's quite an unnerving time for a lot of farmers. There's a lot of things that are going to change, not just financially, but where the policy's going, the lack of clarity on elms. And I think it's just the general feeling among farmers, and I sort of speak from my own.
We lost Claire. Is anyone else struggling to hear?
Yeah, that was a shame. She was really clear and she's just frozen, hasn't she?
Oh, Claire, sorry,
Oh,
you just dropped out there.
Oh, right. Sorry about that.
It was
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're fine now.
Where did I get to?
You mentioned about elms, and yeah,
you said the general feeling amongst farmers.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just it was the feeling of not knowing where we're headed, and really probably farmers not knowing what's expected of them going forward. And I think we're at a real tipping point of, I mean, I don't want to be negative, but I think a lot of farmers are quite disillusioned by what's going to be happening in terms of national schemes. There's been a lot of negativity in the press, and I think it really does get farmers down, sort of for want of a better phrase. I think there's too much negativity in the national media anyway, of sort of demonising what we're doing, and I feel that really does need addressing. And I think the diversity of people on this conference, and this is just one conference, demonstrates the fact that we all have something to contribute. We're all probably wanting the same things, but it's sort of just getting together and communicating better. And the whole subject of the title of the conference itself tonight is that how can we all work together, achieve more? And that's where I feel we're at. It's going to go two ways. It's either going to be farmers are probably going to feel more and more sort of cut off from things, or they can actually work together. And I do think that the projection of farmers as the issue, we're not part of the problem necessarily. We're part of a huge part of the solution, and I think it's just getting that right. And I do think there is definitely more potential for better communication, better relationships, and it's that understanding. And two other huge words I think that need to be used are trust and respect. And I think that if we can crack that, we can all achieve a lot more. That would be my thoughts. But that's from a farmer view. That's with my farmer hat on.
Lovely. Thanks so much, Claire and Stephen. That's really helpful. And I think it's good food for thought going into the discussions. We're just going to have we're going to attempt an icebreaker using Mentimeter, which I'm going to post now in the chat. Hopefully, Lisa. Lisa, can you stop sharing your screen for a minute? Sorry. Right. So Mentimeter is like an online polling thing. It's quite cool. It allows you basically, in a minute, you'll see, I'm going to post a link in the chat, and then there'll be a code that you have to type in. So you click on the link, or you copy the link and paste it into your browser. And then it will take you to a window which Lisa will be sharing, and it'll have a question on, and you can answer the question. And by doing that, it allows us to see everyone's answers. It will pop up on the screen. You'll be able to see everything that's coming through. So there's two questions that you're going to be asked. The first question is, have a think about how do conservationists or people that are interested kind of from environmental advisory kind of role, maybe researchers as well, who communicate well with farmers and negotiate kind of the benefits for wildlife, how do they do it well, and what is it that makes it work about how they do it, and try and think about kind of, I guess, the way that they do it, the language or the kind of attitude. And then the second question, which will pop up, is, do you know a farmer who farms well alongside, or like integrating wildlife and nature, and how do they do that well, and how do they do it profitably? But you'll see the questions on screen. So if you go to www.mentee.com in your internet browser, and when you do that, you'll see, sorry, I'm trying to also do this myself at the same time, so you'll see, like, please enter the code, and then the code you have to enter is 6278019, and then you click submit, and then you should take you through to Lisa's Mentimeter. If it doesn't work for you, then feel free just to post in the chat your responses, and I'll post the question in the chat as well, because I realise quite hard to remember what I said. And Lisa will maybe transfer those responses that she gets in the chat into the thing. Okay, Lisa, do you want to share your screen now? Sorry, I don't think it's going to work until you do.
Yeah, okay. Hang on a minute.
So you'll see the questions will appear. We had a big debate about whether to try this or not, so.
Already got answers, so.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, yeah. You'll see them now popping up on Lisa's screen that she's sharing with us. We have a bit of time to do this, so we can have some silence. there's some nice things coming through here. Listen first. Collaboration with farmers needs included as a starting point rather than top-down approach. And that's the thing I think coming up, understanding their knowledge is one part of the story. Learn from each other. Someone said no idea. That's also true. Okay, got lots of good things coming here. We can share these as well after the session. Yeah, trust and respect. Eager to understand. Quite a lot of things coming out about trust and kind of finding the common ground, and listening. Listening comes up a lot, and I think that's the case. So many different groups of people that you work with. It's very easy just to talk from your perspective. Thanks, Sarah, and those writing in the chat as well. It's great. Take time to find out about their lives and their farm and find out what they already do to manage the habitats. Yeah, I should say that Lancaster University works with Food Futures, which has helped organise the conference. And we have a space on the website, on the Kiko chat, an exhibit space, and we'll be posting stuff from the various sessions that we've helped organise. So the dung beetle session earlier was part of Lancaster University, and we'll post stuff on this up here as well, and make sure that we share everything. Okay, do we feel ready to move on to the next question? Yeah, Rob, that's a good point. These are great approaches for society in general. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we're on the next question now. This is about, do we know, oh yeah, if you need to move, the presenters change the slide. So you'll see at the top, it will say presenters change the slide, and then go to slide. If you click on go to slide, you'll see the next question. And you can start entering stuff in that one. So do you know a farmer who farms well alongside or integrating wildlife and nature? And how do they do this profitably and or productively? Because this is something that we talked about with Nick and Kate when we were planning this session, is this kind of realization that, you know, you need it's profitability, or like at least making a living is really valuable and really important.
Rachel, can you just repeat how to get into Mentee? Sarah's trying to get onto the Mentee.
Oh yeah, oh, Becky's typed here, but Sarah, if you type into your internet browser www.mentee.com, and then when you get to that page, you'll see a code will appear, and it's 6278019. Is that working for you? Just maybe type in the chat if it's not. There's some nice ideas coming through here already. So pasture-fed only systems, mob grazing, regenerative grazing. Changing or tweaking the farm business to suit the nature. So thinking about your breeds and your stocking numbers. Yeah, focus on soil and reducing chemical inputs. Yeah, the soil is like the underpinning thing that underpins our food production, really, the way we produce food here. And so much else in our landscape. Yeah, reduce costs as much as possible. Actually, quite often by reducing numbers. Farming alongside diversification to relieve financial pressures. Oh, someone's written symbols. That's a nice thing about it's totally anonymous. Don't be afraid to be radical. So we've heard a little about this already, but if you want to build, we have to be radical. And many upland farms already integrate farming and nature. To lose this way of farming would be disastrous. Oh, here's some nice examples. Nick and Paul Renison, Bill Grayson. Stunning examples of working with farming and nature and people focusing on soils and working with native stock. Yeah, loads of really nice things coming through. Oh, symbols again. Who sends the symbols? I'm intrigued. Okay, that's excellent. Thank you everyone for trying that, and I think it's been a success. We had a real debate about that. Lisa, this will all get saved, won't it? It's not going to just disappear when you shut your screen. No, it must. Maybe don't shut your screen till the end.
Am I muted? No, I'm
No.
not. Okay, no, it won't disappear. It'll all be saved in Mentimeter.
Okay, excellent. Phew. Okay, do you want to stop sharing your screen now? We'll move on to the breakout rooms. Give ourselves enough time to talk through things. But obviously quite a lot of the ideas that came up might be things that come up in your breakout discussions as well. So we've got 40 minutes for discussion. We've got 2 questions, and we've tried to 67, so you should bring breakout groups of around 7 people, and each breakout group will have someone in who's already a facilitator who has already been briefed on the questions, at least to try and help you capture the conversation and also remind you what the questions are, because I haven't found a way to do that in the breakout rooms very easily. Just to quickly show you what we'll be discussing. So there's 2 questions. So the first one is, what has or would inspire you to adopt agroecological approaches? So this is integrating nature, biodiversity or water management into the uplands. Or what have you found are the barriers? And I guess if you're coming at it from a non-farmer perspective, it's kind of ways that you would inspire people, I guess, to try and adopt agroecological approaches. And the second question is, how do you currently learn new practice or ideas? And this is from your own community of practice, so other farmers, other conservation advisors, other researchers. But then also, how do you learn from other communities? What have you found works well, and what would you want to see more of? And what are the gaps? I guess it's quite a big question, but it's kind of thinking about if we were to design a way that we could work together better in the future, like what is it that has worked well, and what would you like to see more of, and what do you think we need that we haven't got already? And we'll try and take as much of this away and try and figure out if there's ways we can bring people together from our different perspectives. So, Becky, how are you getting on with your breakout groups?
Well, yes, I've got you all set up with relatively even numbers. I did try and mix, but it just got too complicated with scrolling back and forth and so many people in. So I hope that, I'm sure reading through the chat, there are so many people with diverse perspectives here. I'm sure we'll have interesting conversations. So I'm just going to go for it if that's all right with you.
Yeah, excellent.
Brilliant. All right, have a good chat, everyone. You should see your rooms opening now and you can join them, and then I'll bring you back. I'll remind you halfway through when it's time to change question and then bring you back.
Oh, great, everyone, you're returning. Oh, hang on. Fighting with screens. It's gone. Don't know about for you, but that went very fast. Just wait for, I think most people are back with us now. So one thing I forgot to remind the facilitators to do is press record when you get into your session. So I hope some of you remembered the press record. I'm sorry I didn't do the reminder. And hopefully made some notes. I've tried to make some notes from our session. There won't be time obviously to hear back from all of the breakout groups in this session, but we're going to share the notes and we'll make sure they're available afterwards and people. But we thought it might be nice just to hear back maybe from Lisa, Kate and Nick, as you've helped co-organise this. So Lisa, do you want to go first and give a brief summary of what kind of our things that came up in your group?
Yeah, sure. So we didn't actually have a farmer in my group, but we had lots of people who worked on farms or advised. And I think we came up with the fact that some things are likely to change. Is a really important time for change with CAP going and perhaps elms coming and the agricultural bill and lots going on. So there's a good chance that because the economics around farming are going to change, farmers are going to be changing too. And we talked about the importance of champions. I'm calling them champions. So there are some real farmer leaders who can have a significant impact on others around them and supporting them. And we also talked a lot about the importance of peer-to-peer learning, but not just learning situations. So I talked about innovative farmers and but also just actually spending time together in relationships and making relationships. So that may be going down the pub for beer and chips or having cups of tea, but just actually starting to learn about each other and understand each other. We talked about potential opportunities. We did mention young people and how do we, that's a big gap, you know, how do we get the young people who are not really learning about regenerative farming in colleges at all. So there's a real need for better targeting for young people. Social media might be a good way, and lots of farmers are using social media. Can it be enhanced better to reach them? Can we stop the siloing of education so that it's not just farming, it's also forestry and environment and farming? And yeah, I think we talked about elms, which could be really, you know, there could be some really good vehicles through elms, like facilitation groups that have happened so far, maybe those being continued, but also talked about things like machinery cooperatives being an opportunity and a gap going forward. Okay, that's me.
Brilliant. Thanks, Lisa. Kate, you're there. Can you summarise your groups? I think you're on mute. Don't know if you're talking. That's good.
Sorry.
You're back.
Yeah, I did it all on a PowerPoint and now I'm trying to read it now. So in relation to question 1, which was, you know, what inspires you, one of the main things was feeling that you're doing the right thing and seeing the habitat and biodiversity expand on farms, and you know, using our ground to store water, expanding the black grouse range, but saying that it's really good to have support to do, you know, to do that and to be able to help to identify that sort of thing. And in the Yorkshire Dales, they've got the farming officers who help with monitoring, and in places where you do get that extra support rather than just well, saying that through the normal stewardship schemes, you don't get much regular monitoring and sort of guidance on whether you're doing the right thing or not, or how things are progressing. That was sort of one of the barriers, but when it works well, it's very encouraging. So they were the main things. And in terms of barriers, needing more information, so better ID and more information on carbon storage figures, needing to trust the science, not having enough support and facts, really, I suppose, that are based on the land in question. And then a bit similar to you for question 2 on the types of education and things that would, how we learn, on the farm, and like you say, relationships, people finding the PFLA emails really useful, sheep clubs, other farmers, and a lot of, when you look at it, really people things. We also had the comment that we're surprised that there isn't like CPD or education provided or expected, when you sign up to doing a stewardship scheme, that people expected that they would maybe do more and learn more as part of encouragement to do that sort of thing. So I think that's a summary of what we've got down.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. Yeah, so Nick actually invited 3 people from HDB to facilitate as well. And I don't know, Joseph, would you be able to summarise from your group?
Oh, hello. Sorry, I didn't.
Giving you a surprise there. Sorry, I keep doing this to people.
Putting me on the spot. You're making me work. I think actually a lot of the feedback is in line of what's been kind of already discussed. In terms of kind of what inspires, it was, again, I think it's a lot of stuff we know before, leading people that are led by example, that they can follow and see for themselves. I think we had a mixed group as well. So I think what was also interesting was the point was made about money, and finances and financial reward, so that people that have, some of the people that have done it show they can do it and make a sustainable living from it as well. So I think that's an interesting point. I think I think farming in general does follow money, like we all do. We all have to make a living. So I think farming has changed a lot in the last 50, 60 years, and usually that's through various government schemes. So I think that's that was kind of an important, and then points around the communication and where knowledge is gotten. We had a very strong advocate for the internet and different forums. He found them very useful way of finding people, connecting, seeing ideas, and then being almost the idea or a point is, it gives them gives you something to search and look out for more information. And again, to be honest, I don't think there was anything rocket science or new, but it's again those positive things about farming groups, finding people that you can join, discuss, going seeing it for yourself, and if you're more of a kind of a corporate or business, it's people within your organization who set technical content, people there that you can actually speak to and get more information from. So that's, I think, in a nutshell.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks, that's brilliant. And we've actually come into the end now. It's 3 minutes to 9, and I'm keen to keep us to time. So thank you everyone for contributing, and we'll be collecting all this up and we'll be writing it up and trying to bring out some useful things that we can take forward as a group to try and make happen a bit more in that area. I have to admit, in our session we talked a lot about the farmer network and how we want one in North Lancashire or something similar, or what can we do that's similar, what exists. I'm just going to show you very quickly on the website, the Kiko chat, because we have this space. Oh no, am I going to find it? We have a space on the Kiko chat under down here. Can everyone see my screen? Kate, can you nod? I can see you. Yep, good. So you'll see here there's a sponsor showcase, and it says Food Futures and Lancaster Uni. And when you go into this, there's tabs here. So far we just have the website of Food Futures. I've also got a form now that we've put together with innovative farmers for people to share their research questions, or if you've got research ideas, if you're a researcher, then feel free to fill out this form. Just ask for your ideas, and we can try and help connect people up with researchers or with other farmers that's thinking similar things. And we're going to present things on this kind of research ideas map similar to what innovative farmers do, where they put different ideas, and like I put myself here, Rachel, a researcher in Lancaster, and this is what I'm interested in. But we won't be sharing your contact details. We'll just help kind of facilitate bringing people together that have similar interests. But over the week, I'm going to put more tabs in. So there'll be a tab that will summarise the stuff coming out of this session and the dung beetle session and previously today. So yeah, please feel free over the week to explore this sponsor showcase area. And yeah, it will be populated in time. So yeah, that leaves me to say I'll stop sharing my screen. And yeah, thank you again to all the speakers and to everyone that helped kind of pull this together, all the facilitators for quite last minute, some of them the very last minute facilitation whereas the numbers grew. And I really appreciate everyone for coming along and giving your time up this evening. And I hope that more partnership working and knowledge exchange